This is scary. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Emerge 23. I'm Alejandro Arqué. I'm the host of this amazing talk about video games and art. Okay, let me do something. Okay. And I'm here with an incredible panelists with me. I'm a tiny bit nervous because I admire all of them, and it's kind of like an honor to be here with all of them. So let me start with talking about Lucy. Here, she's a freelancer, director, and character designer, managing a successful freelancer career. Lucy Art has helped bring a number of games to life, from small indie games to more recently Disney Illusion Island that got actually launched this weekend. So please, everyone, go get it. Where she got to reimagine her fashion idol, Minnie Mouse. While she has found a new adventure in our direction, character design is her first and forever love. And is very proud of her 2020 Game Dev Heroes Award in art and animation category. Amazing.
Wow.
With over a decade of experience in the games industry, Lucy is an advocate for its improvement and is often found talking about diversity in the industry itself, as well as characters in the games we create. Hello, Lucy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me and for the great intro.
So we're going to go with Sofia Romualdo, senior system designer at Supermassive. Sofia is currently senior system designer at Supermassive. She's worked on the recently released Switchback VR, a launch title for PSVR 2. Please, everyone, go buy it. It's amazing. Where she has been responsible for various gameplay systems such as enemy, combat, progression, and so on. Previously, she worked for Ground Shatter on Rico London and Fighting Tight Spaces. She's been in the industry for over 5 years. Before that, she was an academic and wrote a PhD thesis about design of location-based games such as Pokemon Go and others. Prior to her career in games, she used to work in museums, where she often wondered why there were no or very few video games shown there. As well, we have another Game Dev Hero winner this year. Sofia has been awarded for Best Game Designer, and she was as well nominated in Woman in Games for Best Tech as well, which is amazing. Hello, Sofia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And then we have the great Marta da Silva, actor here in London. Marta is an award-winning polyglot actress and voice performer trained in the Royal oh my God, this is going to be tough. Conservatoire of Scotland, RADA, and the Globe Theatre. She's been part of a wide array of audio productions, including roles in games by Ubisoft, Creative Assembly, Remedy Games, Creepy Jar Games, Prime Beat Games, Naraven Games, and Wispfire, as well as performed in audio dramas like Bard, B7 Media and BBC4, Being a Planet, B7 Media and Audible, Road of Shadows, Beyond Dark Productions, The Sojourn, Space Dog, Vampire the Masquerade Port Saga, Polygon, Observer from Observer Pigs, Homicide at Heaven's Gate, Sentinel Studios, and Jackie the Ripper, Holy Smokes Media. She's also worked with corporate clients like the United Nations, Bayer, Alkin, the Canonica, Minolta, and some Byte Learning UK. Marta is shortlisted for BBC the Mark BB
Award, yeah.
BB Award for the debut performance in 2022 for her role in B7 Media BB4 court drama Bard, and was awarded Best Female Performance in an audio drama for the same performance at the One Voice Awards 2022. She's been nominated for a second consecutive time for Best Female Performance in Audio Drama at the One Voice Awards in 2023. Since 2022, Marta has been a member of BAFTA Connect Games cohort. Thank you, Marta, for coming around.
Thank you very much for listing my whole credit and work history. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Hola a todos. Soy española, pero bueno.
Marta's Spanish. Yeah, I haven't said this, but this is the first Emerge in English, full English. So hopefully it's going to be amazing. Well, what do I say about this? Des here is one of my best friends, an amazing colleague, incredible professional. Sorry. So this is the founder of Altigin, a remote game studio currently working on their next title, The Analyst. As well, he joined recently Game Forge as an executive producer. Before starting his own development studio, Des built a wealth of experience on both the publishing and development side, making video games, having got started over 20 years ago. He has worked in a number of games in the industry-leading product. At Microsoft, he worked on the launch of the original Xbox. He helped EA for 5 years supporting the development teams. He managed R&D at Crytek European office, and also was original producer for Square Enix Collective. His breakthrough project was working with Life is Strange series that won a BAFTA on another awards. So that's where we both of us met. This is a board member of the UK Trade Association for Video Games, UK, and is also a deputy chair on the BAFTA Games Committee. This is a passionate about inclusion and loves building and running effective, diverse teams. Thank you guys for coming around. And he's on holiday, so he's making an extra effort today to be around here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is cool. Yeah, cheers.
Cool. So before we start with the amazing this amazing panel, just saying that today we have a small lottery. If you want to participate on 3 amazing gifts that we're going to give today, we're going to give Resident Evil Village Gold Edition for PS5 Europe, Creepy Syndrome for PC, and After You on PS5 again for Europe. If you want to be on that giveaway, please put exclamation mark sorteo, and then you can start. Lottery. Please start now, and we in a while will get the first winner. Okay, awesome. Cool. So we're going to talk about if video games art or should be considered art or not. I know that all of you have opinions about this. I'm going to reserve mine. But I want to start with, I think there is something on the video game industry that we consider ourselves a bit of an inferior art form to the cinema, literature, painting. And it feels like we always have to, boast about our good things or what we do to showcase that we are one of those. But in reality, does it matter that we are an art form or not? Does it? Marta?
Yes. Well, I think we were touching upon this a little bit before we started the stream. The fact that even the definition of art is still not something that everyone can agree upon. So really deciding whether something is art or isn't is already a bit of a pitfall. So this is mostly a philosophical discussion, really. There's no right answer. And ultimately, I think the question of whether something like the games specifically are art or not has like a double implications. First of all, for the people who make the games, and secondly, for the people who consume or play the games. Whether what you make or not is art actually does have ramifications in terms of getting grants, getting money, getting protections from the government, getting things like copyright protections, etc. I know that in the United States, games finally got treated as art forms in the 2000s, and that gave them a series, people making games, they gave them a series of financial advantages and legal protections that they didn't have before. So in a way, there are practical reasons why you would want games to be defined as art, because that might actually help you make them better, or protect them from, you know, people who might want to take advantage of your creative endeavors. On the other hand, there's the players, right? And then that's when it becomes really interesting, because obviously I've had this conversation dozens of times. When you see a painting or you see a play or you listen to a piece of music as someone who's receiving it, whether you define that as art or not has a lot to do with how you experience it and what it does to you. And it's like a private one-on-one thing. And in that sense, games can both be art and not, depending on who's playing them, when they're playing them, and how it, you know, how when that game arrives in your life and what it means to you, etc. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, because I think there are legitimate reasons to argue on both sides. I fall on the side of probably leaning towards a sort of type of art form. Certainly as an actor, it certainly has artistic elements to it, and people doing art to make the game. Whether as a whole it's considered art or not, that remains to be seen.
Anyone else wants to chip in on this?
Yeah, I would like to add something. First of all, I totally agree with you, Marta. There are, for example, freedom of expression, which is protected in art. This is very important as well. If you want to have games that are considered under that sort of protection, this is different in every country, but in a lot of countries, artistic expression is protected in a way that other media are not. And so that has very real world implications, because as we all know, like, censorship exists, and if you can be protected from that, why would you not want to? But I'm really interested in this idea of what you said, Alejandro, which is that we have an inferiority complex in video games, because I personally believe that this is something that happens a lot with new media. Film went through this, comic books went through this, video games are going through it. And there's really nothing about the medium of video games that is inferior or could be considered inferior. It's just that we're new, or newer. We're not as new as we were. Like, I mean, it's already like 40 something year old history. But I think because we're kind of like, oh, underdogs, and up until very recently, people still thought it was kind of like something that teenagers did and that you grew out of, that there's still that sort of idea. And I think that then coming in and considering, oh, yes, we consider you art, so or if you must be considered art, is because you are growing out of that inferiority. And I have a real problem with that, because I don't think there's anything that we need to grow out of. I don't think there's anything inferior about video games. And I think it comes from this idea of video games are entertainment, and therefore they are less valuable as culture. And I don't think that. I think entertainment is absolutely valuable as culture. And no one, it's very unlikely to find people nowadays that say film is not an art form. But this used to be the case. People did not consider film an art form. And now you have films that are definitely made with a commercial intent in mind and purely for entertainment. And there are films that are made with entertainment in mind and with commercial in mind, but also with a very intentional idea of elevating them. And so I think that the problem is thinking of a medium as inferior, instead of looking at what that medium produces and understanding that some video games are better, like, or will be better executed than others. And that's really where the question should be, instead of going like a blanket criticism of the medium as is just inferior. So I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Lucy?
Yeah, I want to add, I completely agree with everything that's been said before me. And something that was really interesting was culture was mentioned. And I think say like whether it's important to label it as art. I think it is, because it will also change the creator's perspective. Art has like the social responsibility, so you can't just like, you know, make things without realizing the impact of what you're creating has to people. And I think that is something we need to realize as well. Not that everything needs to be like, you know, about like deep thinking and stuff. I think as much as like video games are art, I believe, I think it's like its own kind of like medium, its own type of art. So sometimes it's about evoking, you know, like how satire is not the same as like, I don't know, like Renaissance, like paintings. It's just about evoking different emotions. And I think just games do that really well. And that's why I feel like all genres kind of like have something to bring to the table.
Cool.
Yeah. Have we got to move on? Or can we,
No. Please,
okay.
please.
Like, yeah, this is all awesome. And like, when I was thinking about this session, I was like, oh man, we can talk for weeks about this. But yeah, I love the cultural / social element, and I think if we go back millennia, right, us as humans, you've got the status quo, right, and that doesn't like being disrupted. And when we're talking about what's socially acceptable, not even just art, but like as a job, like video games, man, we're still low down on the ladder. And I think we absolutely 100% are culturally relevant. Like we touch so many people in the world. But the problem with that is, even though we've gone mainstream fiscally, like we make money hand over fist and pay loads of taxes, but like as part of a socially acceptable thing, like if someone says, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, like, oh, I'm a video games designer, like they're not even in the same stratosphere. And I don't mean of importance, because doctors are important, right? Like we just have fun. But like, you know, in terms of like, no, it's a serious job and we have a serious impact on those things. Like, you know, we manage people, we're responsible for everything extended from that. Like, you know, so like they get paid and, you know, they can provide for themselves and their families. But that's the biggest thing for me. It's when like a piece of art from a video game, and like we've all worked on some beautiful things, obviously subjective, but how long is it going to be before something like that is hanging up in the Louvre or the Tate Gallery, right? And I don't mean a special one room in the furthest corner of the museum that's only available on a Tuesday night. Like it's just like, no. Here's the sorry, excuse me, I'm thinking my like traditional art knowledge, but Van Gogh, Michelangelo, whatever, and then like the who's making cool stuff, the Last of Us section, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, because it's I cannot see a time when that's going to be a thing. But that's kind of like where that level of sociability is going to be. Like that's once we crack that, it's going to be great. And it's nothing to do with quality, because we are making amazing things right now. But yeah, and sorry, it's not that that's not totally happening. Like there's a really cool museum that I went to in Melbourne that I'm going to forget the name of, but they've got a really fantastic moving image exhibition. And because video games are moving images, that's included. It's not just this is moving image. Oh yeah, and video games. It's just the whole thing. And you move through the years and different sections, and then obviously 1980s or arguably 70s, like when we turned up, like, you know, you've got a historic wall of theirs. Like it's just, yeah, it's going to take so long. And the final point I want to make is what I mean is music is mainstream. There's different types within that are absolutely not mainstream, and some that's great, but that's where we are. Video games, we're still just a subset. And like that's not that we're not touching people, but there's so many people who just don't self-identify as playing video games, right? Like I speak to older people, I was like, oh, do you play games? No. And then like you see them on their phone, they're playing 4 different mobile games. You're just like, and they're like level 1,000, right? So they put like hours into this thing. It's not just, oh, my kid's playing it. It's like, it's them. So even that, they put that much investment in playing a video game, and they still won't self-identify as a gamer. So yeah, until we crack that, we're always going to be on this weird social level. So
actually,
sorry.
no, it's good actually, because that was kind of the next topic. So you started. I think it's probably it's because we are too immature as a medium. Not immature itself, but it's in terms of age. I think it's right now we can consider ourselves like what 50-year-old industry in a way, because it started in the 70s more or less. Jesus, 50. Oh wow. Yeah, I know. Don't get me started. But even the Science Museum now has a power-up here in London, has a power-up exhibition that's just read today, that's going to be permanent now. And Sofia knows it because she's gone there. I haven't been there yet, but I want to check. But maybe it's just because it's too young. However, I think maybe the advantage that we have versus other industries maybe is because we have technology, and technology advances a lot. But yeah. So games. I mean, I have here incredible people doing incredible stuff, like Lucy doing art, Marta creating art with her voice and her performance. This here is just making it happen and creating all this craziness there. But writing is an art form, acting is an art form, doing art itself, it's an art form. I'm going to go with that for Sofia. Game design is something very, very, very new. Do you think that because like game design, I'll say as well, programming, we don't have any programmers here, but that will apply to them. Do you think game design can be compared to the other art forms that make a game? And why would that be? Sorry, Sofia.
That's an excellent question. And I actually feel very strongly about this. I'm actually going to start by giving a shout out to this brilliant game designer, Brenda Romero. So she wrote an essay called "The Mechanic is the Message." And this is a shout out to, I think, Dan McLuhan, "The Medium is the Message." Forgive me if I'm like forgetting this. This was from my PhD era, which was many years ago. And basically what it was, she created a series of games, including one that's very well known called Train, which was basically using what is very specific to the medium of games, which is the mechanic, and really leaning into that as what like the artistic expression of what she made. And this really resonated with me because I really feel strongly about that the medium of video games doesn't have to always be borrowing from other media. So yes, we use writing, we use actors, we have the visual aesthetic. There's a lot that we borrow from other mediums. And for example, we see many times video games described as cinematic. So obviously we're borrowing from movies, but the systems, the mechanics, the interaction is the thing that then makes games their own special, unique medium. And so absolutely, I think that that can be elevated to an art form, obviously, depending on how you make it. But I feel very strongly that the way you make a system in a game and the way that you do the mechanics, and then what you're basically asking the player to do to enact those mechanics, is an art form. So I feel very strongly about this. And if you haven't, if I explain what Train is about, I'm kind of spoiling it. So it's worth checking it out if you don't know about it, and the rest of the games in her series as well. But yeah, this is how I feel about my own work. Obviously, I am very biased, but I'm interested to know how everyone else feels as well.
And actually, I'm going to jump there. I know I shouldn't, but I need to. I think a perfect example for me is it was, oh my god, I forgot the name. Oh, this is what happens. That game
Describe it.
Like, yes, a game. Actually, the mechanic, that one section of that game was very good. It had a lot of gameplay in it. No a single tutorial, and it was what remains of Edith Finch. There you go. There is a whole section where you play as a fishmonger in there, which I'm not going to say anything else, but that mechanic kind of grows on you and kind of tells a story in a very interesting way that I don't think can be told anywhere else. But yeah, I think I agree with you in there, Sophia. Lucy, I can see you there.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I didn't interrupt.
No. I was trying to make space.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I wanted to say, so design, I feel like is something like what Sophia said about it being so specific to the medium is so true. Like if I draw something, it's just a drawing, right? If like we put sound on it and stuff, like it's a movie, like it's design that makes the games what they are. And art is about evoking emotion, and I think design is literally all about evoking the right emotion from the player. So you can't say that is not like what brings it all together and what, you know, like if everything else is an art form, or if games are an art form, then design is definitely in the forefront of that.
Marta, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, my knowledge of the technical aspects or construction sort of blocks of video games is rather limited. You know, I participate more towards the end of the process, and obviously I play the video games. But it's something that has always struck me. The thing about games, right, that is different from any other kind of artistic endeavor is their interactivity. All other media is pretty much passive. You sort of receive it, and whatever that does to you is what it is. You don't have a say. You have no agency. There is no active relationship between you and what you're experiencing. Games are interactive in different levels, in different ways, and the design and mechanics are specifically what make them interactive. So it's literally what makes games games. Without it, it's not a game, it's something else. And the thing is, this is not something, however, it's not exclusive to games, because there is, like, movies are not just made, you know, instinctively. There are rules. The way movies are cut, the way things are shot, the way music is put into the movie is meant to make you feel certain things at certain moments. It's done consciously. There is a technique. There is a technical aspect to film. It is the same with theater. Things are written. If you talk to people who write theater, they spend years perfecting the structure of the show, and then someone has to come along and put that on stage, and even that decision and how things are shown is going to have a huge impact on how that translates to the audience. So design is essentially that, only applied to games and the specific sort of technology and technical aspects of what a game is. But yeah, absolutely, I think it does not only not mean that games aren't art, it just reinforces the fact that it is a medium that, like all the others, works to engage the audience and just does it in a very specific way. And it is even more, I think, artistic, because it's not just creative. You have to be technically savvy, and it's also very connected to human psychology. You really need to understand a lot of, you know, very fine-tune a lot of elements that are very, very complex. Like a human mind is like, let's not even go there. So yeah, I have huge admiration for people who can, from nothing, create a mechanic that actually does things to you, engages you in a certain way, makes you, yeah, relate to a game or act in certain ways, or you know, explore a story or a character journey in a certain way. That is incredible. That is truly admirable. So absolutely no reason to feel, you know, like it's inferior in any way, because it's absolutely not. It's really cool. That's, yeah.
Just to take another angle on the question, if I think about using someone, an artist, right, like as a noun, right, and bear with me on this. If you watch Lionel Messi play football, the stuff he does on that football pitch and how he controls the ball and makes it do things as if it's on a controller, you would call him an artist in the context of football, right? Like he's magnificent. And then if I look at myself as not an artist, the job, but when I create project plans and spreadsheets, I want them to be beautiful because I want them to be functional and easy to read and good to look at, right? So I would call myself this, but like when you take that extra effort to make something to convey information that is just functional, but like to, I guess, to evoke the emotion of like, oh, you've taken the time to make it well so I can read it. And then if we bounce around to all of the functional jobs, like it's possible for a building to be beautiful, right? Like, but its job is to be a building to house things. But the architect, some of them are artists and some of them are not. Some of them are just functional. And it's kind of like on a sliding scale, right? So absolutely. And if I go back to one of my favorite games, in fact, no, it's not a favorite game. It's one of my favorite levels ever. I think it was Modern Warfare 2, and it was all gillied up. And like the level design of that level is incredible. Like, and I had to play it once, and I'm so lucky. The first time round, I just played it as a gamer, and I was like, holy shit! At the end, you put the controller down, and it's like a workout. You're on a roller coaster of emotions, and I was a little bit out of breath. I was like, yeah, my heart rate was elevated. It's awesome. And then I was like, I have to play it again. And then, like, I mean, we've all done it here. Like, when you go the second, third time through, obviously it loses its spark, but you start to recognize when a design has been clever, and they'll be like, okay, cool. Well, if we hide this behind here, then that's going to evoke that reaction. And just to labour the point, the video we were chatting about Breath of the Wild and how it's an open world game and how you kind of don't really get lost. You don't get overwhelmed with things. Just watching how they design literally just the shape of mountains so that you can only see one really big thing. So you've always got that North Star to go for. Like, that's pure artistry. So, yeah.
Yeah. I cannot agree with you more there. I'm going to do a small break here just for the chat. We are about to the first lottery. So we are giving away Resident Evil Village Gold Edition for PS5. So please put exclamation mark lottery because we're going to give it away in 3, 2, 1. So that's closed. So we'll get an announcement of the name very, very soon. Good luck, everyone. As soon as we finish this, the next one to give away will be Creepy Syndrome for PC and After You on PC. Okay, so good luck, everyone. Cool. So while we wait for the name, I'm going to go. So the lottery for Resident Evil has been closed. Cool. Let's go for the next one. That's going to go for you, Lucy, because so we kind of touched upon this on the pre-show. Most of the art forms, I'll say, have a person to identify as an author. Like, for example, we have Picasso, we have Edgar Allan Poe or Mary Shelley, we have Alfred Hitchcock and Sofia Coppola. The games tend to be known more about the publisher. Oh, this is by Square Enix, or this is by Electronic Arts, or sometimes we even know the name of the developer, like it'll be, oh my God, Hello Games or stuff like this. Sometimes we know an author, like everyone's thinking of one, which is Hideo Kojima here. Maybe that's, do we need that type of author in the industry? Is it useful to have that? What do you think?
That's really interesting. Oh no, that feels like such a big question. So I think we need to make sure people can, get the praise they need, they want and they deserve for their work. So put it under a single name, it always feels a bit like you're taking that away from them. That's why I think credits are important, right? But yeah, nobody wants to be like hidden away in like little like credits, like 10 minutes down the line after you finish the game, which is really sad. The thing with games is that it takes so many people to create them that you can't actively just start listing everyone who made the game, like when you only have like a few seconds of the person, but like, oh, who made this game? So I think it's a really interesting question. I don't even know if there's an answer to that. I think as long as there's transparency there, like, hey, this person's the publisher, but this is the developer, or you know, or maybe educating the audience to recognize that it doesn't just take one person and the person you see, the name you see, and like how much work. Like I think we see a lot of that people don't understand the workings behind developing a video game. So I think being a bit more open, like we know that like Hollywood movies take, you know, thousands, hundreds and thousands of people, I think. So like, I think it is about just, you know, being transparent, educating people, because there's no easy way to do it, unfortunately. At least that's my opinion. That's how I see it.
Ooh, I think we lost Alejandro.
We lost our moderator.
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh no, it's a riot. Let's party.
Quick, everyone, let's party.
Sophia, you did.
Yeah, I actually, Lucy, I 100% agree with you. And it's funny that this idea of the artist as this individual genius is really quite, well, I won't say recent, but I think it's just like something from the Renaissance, right? Because before then, art was considered like the work of ateliers. I don't know how to say that word actually. So it was considered like collective. And hi, welcome back, Alejandro.
Sorry, my internet connection dropped a second.
That's okay. So I was just saying that this idea of an individual artistic genius wasn't always like this, and I think that actually in more contemporary art, you now have like artists like Ai Weiwei, Jeff Koons, who are like they're recognized as an individual artist, but actually a lot of times their art is made by they have like a team of artists, technicians working for them. And so that's actually quite common. And you touched upon film, and that's absolutely true. Like you have film directors and you go, it's a film by I don't know, like Sofia Coppola, and then this movie was made by thousands and thousands of people without whom it could not have been made. It cannot have been made by one single person. But I think we as like people are in love with this idea of individual genius, and you always look for it. And I think video games have been doing that a lot in recent years, especially. So I feel like that's sort of obsession that is a little bit reductive, because I think that's something beautiful in a work of art that could not have been done. It's more than the sum of its parts, right? You have like different people who are good at what they do. When they come together, they make something that would not have been possible if they were doing this by themselves. And I think it's very dangerous, and you touched upon this as well. Oh, sorry, did I lose everybody?
I'm here.
Oh, I don't see anybody else.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
We all disappeared for a second.
Yeah. I think is also dangerous, because then you have some things. This sometimes happens, which is the idea of the indie developer, and this game was made by one person or two people, and what usually happens is that everybody else who worked on the game was just left out of the credits, because it is easier to sell this idea of, this game was made by like one or two people, rather than there was this army of contractors that contributed to the game, and then you just left them out. So I don't know. I find that a bit reductive.
Marta, you were.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think Lucy also hit on a very important point, which is about education, right, and transparency. And I think all new medium goes through this. Like films, once upon a time, it was the studio that was the draw. what studio, when you had the studio system in Hollywood, and then that moved towards the actors because it's what you see and it's the easiest thing for people to recognize is who is on the screen. And then you moved into auteur directors, sort of like mid-century, and now it's kind of a mix of both. And it's also a marketing tool. So it's like, why do you choose to say who's in the movie or who made it, etc.? There are ulterior motives about it. I think it's quite interesting, and I think it's relevant to maybe people watching this. Manga. It's a very interesting example about this. I have, you can't see it here, but I own quite a bit of manga. Let me just grab one. I'll just grab the first random one I have from my very large library. So manga is very much divided into two concepts, which is the publisher and the author. Manga is never drawn or written by a single person. Everybody in Japan, everybody in the world knows you have the author, and then he has like a slew of people slaving over what is being drawn, because they release monthly, and it's literally dozens of people, and these people, like, they work 18 hours a day. We're talking intense work. None of them are credited anywhere. I have no idea who assists the mangaka. I have literally no idea. And that is a system that has been that way since manga exists, and nobody has ever questioned it. So I agree with Sofia that it is dangerous. To them, it's worthwhile because they know they worked on it, and the mangaka knows it, and the publisher knows it, and so they decide to create their own story. The publisher will maybe, publish it and give them work opportunities. But as far as the audience is concerned, they don't exist. With games being such complex projects that can, have teams of hundreds of people working behind them, finding a balance between giving credit to everybody who deserves it, but also making it palatable to the audience, whilst also making it recognizable, whilst also making it like a good marketing tool. That's, I think, the key, is finding that balance, which is why I think it's imperfect at the moment, not just in games, but in every medium pretty much, is because it's not easy and it's going to take some time. I would say, maybe music, writing, and maybe some art, like plastic arts, can claim like this one person or this people did it, but all the rest, even architecture, like the architect did not build the building. He didn't actually physically build it. That was other people doing that. That's engineers and like actual, craftsmen. But you always talk about, the architect behind it. So yeah, it's like a really fascinating and interesting discussion. And it also speaks back to how every art form functions practically, as in how things are made. But yeah, I agree. Like, educating people, transparency, and credit what credit's due, especially so people get paid for the work. That's the key.
Just to put my evil corporation hat on, yeah, like and Sofia, everyone's touched on it, right? Basically, as a society, we love celebrity, don't we? Like, we love that story of one person, and then, from a company perspective, that is also easier to market. Like, so when you're doing a press tour, like, yeah, I'll ship maybe 3 of you around. I don't want to ship 100 of you on the dev team on a plane to go promote this game. Like, it's just not going to be a thing. I mean, with movies, like, I hate it, but like, star power is a thing, right? Like, you go and see a film because, Jennifer Lawrence is in it or DiCaprio's in it. Like, I can't even list the amount of mediocre films I've seen that I would never have seen if my favorite actor wasn't in it. And the studios know this, right? Like, that's what they trade off. Which, because I used to have a massive problem. It's like, why is this actor in such a shit movie? And you're just like, well, obviously because they got paid a shit ton of money for it. And and I can't remember who said it before, but like, because sometimes it's the machine, right? Like, it's a commercial endeavor and not like a less subjectively artistic endeavor, right? So, yeah, and from that angle, that's not something, like, money is the root of everything, right? Like, it's not going to go away. But more nicely, and I'm not saying that he's going the right way about it, but the avenue that Kojima is taking, using superstars in his games and slowly blending from video games into the society accepted media of film, bringing it mainstream. Now you've got people who don't care about us, like, oh, who's this Kojima guy? And then even a small subset of that are going to be like, oh, okay, what's this game stuff he's done? You know, like the positive impact of that. Like, I'm all for like getting people in and expanding their minds. And like I said, I'm not going to go about it his way, but it's definitely something I think about. Especially like with casting for games, right? It just, there are amazing voice actors that aren't well known, but the temptation is there, right? Like where you're just like, hey, if we spend a little bit extra, we can get that girl off the telly. And you know what I mean? Like then you're like, and then the commercial hat comes back on, right? If we get her in there, maybe it goes from 5,000 sales to 15,000 sales, and then you're just in that maelstrom of like, oh.
Spoiler alert, Des.
Yeah,
it doesn't. That's the one thing about games, is that gamers don't care about Hollywood actors being in their games, and people who don't like games don't give a shit if Hollywood actors are in the games to play them. They don't care. In my experience, they're not going to play a game just because an actor is in it. Because it's a movie, you go, you sit, you watch it, but a game requires you to actually interact with it. And if you don't have the gaming thing, they're like, what is this controller? What is this story? Like, it's not enough of a draw. And we've seen how famous actors have been cast in roles, their performances were not up to scratch, and they were recast by actual professional voiceover actors who knew what they were doing, because the gaming community was like, what is this shit? I want a good actor doing the job. So it's a deceptive, like, I understand why it's commercially very interesting, but I think it's deceptive. And if you do the market research, you will find it's kind of like marketing, like adverts and stuff. The return is probably not worthwhile the investment or the risk that you might have, like the fallout with actual people who game. Again, I don't have the data. I don't know for sure, but in my personal, very anecdotal experience, it's rarely the case that people who don't like, because I'm an actor, right? I move in the theater and film worlds. People who don't give a shit about games don't give a shit about games. They don't know anything about Kojima. They don't know about the Death Stranding and all those actors being in those. They have no idea, and they do not care. It's really interesting.
Okay.
But I mean, again, we would need more data to know if that is. I think that's the key, right? When you're making like an investment in a commercial decision, it's probably useful to have some kind of market research. But is that even a thing yet? Does that exist? I don't know.
Yeah, but it's true that probably Cole's marketing-wise and like eye-wise, it kind of brings more, let's say, marketing endeavor. Like it's easier for everyone to identify, which is interesting. Sophia?
Can I just add, sorry, I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Marta. I don't know if that's the case for every single game. And I'm thinking of actually, well, I work for Supermassive Games, and we do use a lot of Hollywood actors, and they promote the game to their audience. So, for example, in the Quarry, the actors, who are all very well-known Hollywood actors, they stream the game very often in their Twitch channels, and they talk about the game on their social media, and they promote it to people who would otherwise probably never have heard of our games. And so that sort of reach is something that you're also getting when you get a big name actor. I don't know if that's the case for every type of game, but I can tell you that I really think that, for example, for our games, that really does make a difference.
Actually, you have a fair point of also the actors' age and the fact that newer actors are more involved in social media and things like Twitch. I didn't think about that, but you're right. That's also like a generational thing. Like people who are my age or older, they don't know how to do that, but evidently younger actors and stuff, probably. I agree, you're right. That's something I hadn't thought about. Yeah.
So I think that this is absolutely right. I think that in terms of marketing, it is a draw, and that you can use that to an advantage. And yeah, Supermassive, Hideo Kojima really like Death Stranding was pretty much a who's who of Hollywood royalty. So yeah,
Cool.
my 2 cents.
So I'm gonna do a small break. Remember, everyone, we are doing a lottery. The next one is Creepy Syndrome. Please put ! lottery or ! sorteo, and we will close in 10 more minutes for Creepy Syndrome on PC. Now, I'm gonna go for. You've touched upon, all of you touched upon this, but I want to go for this and that one. And actually, this is something that comes from the chat, and I thought it was very good. So it comes from Obar. So it's true that, like, going to the cinema, well, before it used to cost £5. Now it's kind of like a bit more expensive. Yeah, I know. I'm going to see Barbie later on. It's going to be fun. Anyway, so, but going some of the, go to a museum, sometimes it's not expensive, or it's very easy. You go there, you consume the art. No, sometimes books are very on sale, very, very easy. You just grab a book, read it. Maybe one of the problems that we may face in gaming industry in general is that the entry point is very, it's not as easy. You need to own mobile, you need to own a console, you need to own a PC, and then if you own a PC, it's not just a PC. You need to have Steam. You have to have Epic. You need to be well versed in how to use the Apple Store or PSN on how to how to use these controllers. Some of you mentioned, like, I give that to my mom and goes exactly. However, the phone, maybe it's easier. Maybe that's what's kind of keeping us a bit from that kind of explosion in a way. I know that we are a market, but what do you think of this?
So, sorry, the question is, do video games have a higher barrier to entry than other mediums?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, 100% for all the hardware reasons you mentioned, and even with cheap hardware, there's a tech and software limit, right? Yeah, and I think you're right. That is definitely slowing it down. And I think we had a really good go at it. I say we. Nintendo had a really good go of it with the Wii. They were like, they saw that hardware problem. As, hey, you know what? TV remotes have been around for a while. Why don't we make our controller like a TV remote? Genius, absolute genius. Like, I know too many older parents and grandparents that had Wii's, right? And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, that was never ever going to be a thing. But yeah. So that's amazing. And also, I guess the mobile phone, right? Like, there's a reason why mobile gaming exploded, because it's a subset of a functional device, right? Most people have phones now. And then, kind of go on a slight tangent, I think we are getting a bit more well-versed about making our games more accessible across the board, right? So let's take away the, I'm going to call it the simple hardware barrier first, right? So you made the decision, like, you've got a PC, you've got a console, right? The controller, sure, we designed it ways so maybe only use 1 or 2 buttons, like we did with the 8-bit systems. Even now, with, like, what we've got, 16 buttons on controllers now. Like, we've got different control schemes that we can change the layout. Like, if you change the set config that I give you, you can completely change the layout. Or you have simplified controls where it's just like, okay, you can play the game with these subset of 4 controls, but if you're more skillful, there's another layer on top for you, right? So we're getting a lot better at doing that. And then with specialist hardware, where people are less able, we are like, hey, there's a specific controller that can act as an interface between whatever needs you have and being able to play the game, right? So, yeah, the last 3 or 4 years have been great for trying to make that more accessible. And then, kind of was touching on the last question where we got to is where we're, because again, the biggest problem is money and time, right? we're no longer in our silos, right? Films aren't fighting films, games aren't fighting games or books. We are all fighting for people's time. And the easier and more familiar we make that, gives us that little bit of an advantage. And so you can see where Netflix were trying to go, right? With you've got the passive media, let's add that interactive component on it. And let's, as you said, Marta, let's get that data that says, okay, do they want it? Is there an appetite for this? If it is, we'll keep going, right? And I always get told off for this, but at the minute we're at the age where I guess people older than us, the only screen they trust is the TV, right? It's not their phone, it's not laptops, it's the TV that they trust. So once you start blending into that, you're going to start to see that perforation, basically. So yeah, sorry, really long answer, but yeah, good question. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone wants to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add. So growing up, I had a Game Boy Color, and then I went to 3DS. I had nothing in between. And I think like now with games being like Des was saying, on like things that you already have, like a phone, or like most people have, I don't want to assume. Like I think it's definitely getting more like easier to kind of like get into. Like games are getting more expensive, like the big games are getting more expensive, but the teams are getting more expensive and the tech is getting more expensive, you know, like you need to make sure that it is what it's worth, right? And yeah, with quality going up, with like the teams going up, unfortunately, like they have to, get paid. Like it's kind of like a product of that. But there's also so many indie games that like £1, £2, there's like free games on your phone. You'll watch some adverts, but like it's about, I think, wherever you are and the like how much money you can spend on games, like there's always something for you, and there's so many like genres and so many like indie teams that are just creating like content for you in like across the board. So I think there's always something to kind of like help people get into games. It's just like the bigger stuff obviously like requires a little bit more of so, go on, Marta.
I agree absolutely with what you both said, and I think also it'll be very interesting because, at least for me, my age, I am a bridge, like my generation is a bridge between the analog and digital eras, right? So I grew up with, I had a Game Boy, not even a color. I had the big clunky gray Game Boy. I had a Sega, a handheld Sega that nobody remembers. And yeah, it was an amazing console. It's incredible. I still own them. And then I went into other Game Boys, and then I moved into PlayStation. So I grew up with the technology, and so I had time to sort of learn to use it. And for me, a controller is literally second nature. I don't even need to think about it. My brain is wired. You give my mom, like I left my mom alone when I moved out of the house, and we watched TV through my PlayStation, because a lot of the channels and stuff are through the PlayStation. To watch television, she had to use a controller for the menus and stuff. And at the beginning, she didn't know what she was doing, and she didn't understand it. It's like, what is this thing? I don't. And then after having to use it to watch telly, she had to force herself to learn it. And now she can use it rather easily. So I think as younger children now are growing up with direct contact with all kinds of technology. I mean, kids are on their tablets, on their phones, on PCs. And if their parents are gamers or have a console and they grow up watching and using those, eventually it's going to be a matter of like, it's like a time thing. Eventually a larger proportion of the population is going to be very familiar and comfortable with using the technology. And so then the barrier will become the accessibility barrier will be more of a money thing, definitely, what's available. And then like personal sort of things to take into account. Like not everyone, sense-wise can interact in the same way with everything. You have to think about people who are deaf or blind or whatever, who probably also want to be able to play games. But yeah, I think the technological barrier, part of it at least, is phasing out in the same ways that you used to have to go to the movies to watch a film, and now you have it on Netflix on the telly. you know, the cinemas are struggling at the moment, especially after COVID, because people have now become accustomed to watching film at home when they want to on their little tellies. And I think with games, we're kind of seeing that evolution as well. And it'll just be interesting to see where the flow and the trends go, where people are going to end up preferring to play on like little screens or little handheld screens. Like, have you seen the new PlayStation streaming device that was just announced, which is like $350 or something? I'm like, that's very expensive for a screen, but okay. If that's the way things are going, or if people are going to be happy to sit in front of a television or a computer. I mean, streamers are huge. Like they're a huge aspect about putting games out there, right? And streamers play on big ass computers with big screens, and everybody who's watching is like, oh, I wish I could have that set up at home. You know, that looks so cool. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and what people end up doing in terms of where and how they want to play games.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, 1 second. I'm gonna close the lottery for the game Creepy Syndrome. So everyone that just put their lottery ! That's that. And we can open the one for After You on PS5. Okay. Cool. So please put ! Lottery, ! Sorteo to be able to be part of the raffle for After You on PS5. That's
yes.
Go.
Sorry. Yeah. I just love that, and I just wanted to share a quick story about like the interactivity portion. So one of my favorite memories of one of my sons was when he started to be a toddler. I kind of noticed all like little fingerprints were on the big TV in the living room, and like every so often I'd be like, what the fuck? And so I'd be clean it off. And then this happened for a couple of weeks. And then I just happened to catch him one day doing the same thing on our iPad. So like, and obviously when they're off, like they're just black pieces of glass, right? So even at like 10, 11 months old, he's just like, hey, I can touch this thing. I see mummy and daddy touching this thing. Why can't I touch that big thing that looks the same? So like, absolutely, like I just love that point of that. We've evolved into that, just like a new paradigm. And you know, I just want to shout out, like, you know, Apple, like they've done a great thing of making this little slab of glass like desirable and usable, right? Like they've fused it very well. But then I also wanted to say about the right product at the right time. So if we go back, I said the Wii was amazing, but obviously Nintendo fucked up straight after that with the Wii U, because they saw that, right? They were like, most homes have one TV as the main entertainment device, but like, how can we share that? And like the idea was fine, right? But the execution was not. And like, so I personally think PlayStation are going to fuck up again. Like that, having a single device for that thing is too much. Whereas, because that functionality already exists. Like you can buy like £100 backbone, and you can plug your phone into it and then create the same functionality. Arguably, you could do it with your iPad. And then the other thing that also made me think about was cloud gaming. So obviously, I don't know where everyone is in the world, but like internet, as technologically advanced as we are, like Wi-Fi internet, like we're fucking that up. And so, but once we crack that, like I think, you know, where everyone's going with cloud gaming, like that's going to kick off, because then, you know, as we're talking about accessibility here, the hardware isn't the bottleneck. It's the screen, right? And the internet. So once you combine those two things, it's going to be great. And sorry, further, just to underline the point, one of my favorite things that I did was I was playing Xbox Game Pass on my Apple iPad using a Sony PlayStation controller. Like, if that is not both an unholy union, but also the most amazing thing ever, like I don't know what is. Yeah.
Cool. So I know we've been talking a lot about more kind of selling, and I'm gonna kind of try to bring it back to art forms. And I'm gonna challenge Sophia and Lucy for this, because I'm very interested. So I don't know who wants to take this one first. So, there's a lot of like artistic kind of movements on art. Like you have, the Cubism, the well, and now everything escaped my mind. But on the facade, doesn't seem like game has this, and I kind of, on my mind, I kind of see it in two ways. There's sometimes you get these amazing authored visuals, like Island of Illusion, which has impeccable art style, which is very, very. I mean, it has a very marked art style. Gameplay wise, it is Metroidvania, which is great. But then you have some other kind of like, maybe it's a gameplay game genres, which is more kind of system driven or content driven. Do you think that we don't have those kind of cubism and modern art, but we have other styles, and we haven't maybe explained it or push it to the mass market enough to say that we have that? Any of you want to take this to begin with? Because I want both of your opinions. Sophia.
Do you want to go first, Lucy, or should I?
Go.
Okay. That's a really good question, Alejandro. I actually think that we can see definite movements in games. They're more about genres, but not just genres. So I remember, for example, when there was the explosion of the so-called walking simulators, and then it seemed like everyone was doing that, and like really good ones and some forgettable ones. But even before that, we had like this indie explosion, and it felt like everyone, like there were a lot of like indie expression, basically, like a lot of games that came up that was like anything, unlike anything anyone had seen before. So I think we can definitely see some patterns emerge, whether or not they are grouped under art movements. I guess that's more of like an academic exercise. So art movements aren't usually, it's not like the artists go in and think of, we'll create a new art movement. It's usually critics, right, that start to talk about it and start like grouping artists under a certain movement. And yeah, I don't know if we have that quite as much in video games, except with genres. Like some genres, like it feels like everyone kind of moves toward one genre, and then another genre, another game like becomes really popular in a different genre, and everyone kind of moves toward it. And because then you kind of have to be unique within that sort of marketplace, you then see a lot of experimentation, and you see a lot of really amazing stuff happening because people want to iterate on it, right? So create something unique out of that. So yeah, that's more of what I look at, the way that I look at it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Lucy.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking the same thing, because you can't, like, my first thought was like, oh, you have like pixel art and things like that, but that's just an aspect of games. That's because how I see games, right? Like the visual aspect of it. But I think that's more what it is, because you can't just forget about everything else that makes games what they are. And yeah, we have been seeing these, like, I don't want to say trends. I think it's more like, it's the indie explosion, or like in the early 2000s, the like beige emo game explosion, Like, so I think it's just like we go through like eras of like just this like creativity channel to a very like specific place. But it's really hard to put it into words, because it is quite like, yeah, it was walking simulators, but it was also like a very certain type of like, people innovated within that and is still counted within that space. But yeah, I think it's just that's where we will struggle, kind of like putting things into words, because the medium is a collection of what it's made. So like to find the common threads, I think it's going to be really difficult to like put those into words. So I think what Sofia said is like the best way of kind of finding those eras in games.
Arta?
One
Yes.
thing I think is interesting as well, and I think it's also what adds difficulty. I agree with Sofia. I think, as you said, art movements are not really led by the artists necessarily. It's more of an external thing that they like to sort of put things in boxes, even though there are some this is the interesting thing. Sometimes there are a group of artists that get together, and in a response to what is going on in the real world, they kind of use the art as a means of talking about it or creating discussion about it, which is how a lot of these movements begin and end. They're linked to specific moments in time. The thing about games is, even when that is the case, you have two things that plastic arts don't really have as much, or even theater, is that it takes a long time to make games. Most big games take much longer than other art forms to make, time-wise. So you might start at point A where this is happening, but by the time the game is out, maybe that has stopped and disappeared, and you're in an entirely different decade. You know, you see all these games that started being developed or thought about 15 years ago, and then they come out and you can tell it's like they feel old because you have moved on in your life and the world has moved on, but the people making the game were still making the game. So there's that difficulty. There's like they're not in sync with time. And then secondly, there is such a thing as, like, I think it doesn't happen as much with other types of art forms, fatigue. Because I've been hearing this a lot recently. People are like, what is it? Is it Dark Souls fatigue or that type of game, whatever it's called? I don't play those because they're too hard. But I know they've been all the rage. And for the first time, I'm beginning to hear people who are big fans of these games, who have played all of the different incredibly creative takes on them, being like, yeah, but I'm a bit, I have to admit, for the first time, I'm having fatigue about this specific. It's almost like listening to the same song over and over and over when you're a teen. And then after a while, you're like, please, I don't want to hear this song ever again. I'm so sick and tired of it. But I think fatigue is almost like a genre thing, right? So even if you have really great games within the genre, if you're tired of the mechanics of the design, that might be an issue as well. So yeah, with games, I think definitely it's more of a genre thing than an art movement thing. There's the issue with time, and then there's the issue with, again, it's an interactive thing. You have to play them and keep coming back at them, and they do take a long, usually it's a lot of hours that you are engaging with the same piece of art. So yeah, it's I completely forgot the original question, but I think the reason we don't have the artistic movement thing in games, at least at the moment, is probably linked to all of those things, in a way.
Cool. And I'm going to open very briefly a very interesting melon here, and I'm going to go for this. So, I mean, you just mentioned it, you all mentioned it briefly, and we talked at some point as well about critics, people that actually review the games, and, there's kind of, it feels like as well as too specialized on, or there's not enough maybe critics for, like, everyone reviews the Barbies, or or in our case will be like the new Uncharted, or Baldur's Gate is going to be the new biggest, most amazing stuff. But then it feels like maybe the journalism on games need to kind of catch up as well to all those small games. What do you think? Sorry. Wow. So do you think that as well, we are a small, like a young industry, maybe the let's say the journalist needs to grow with the industry and start showcasing all this stuff, or is it just depending on the industry itself? Does journalism has something to do with this? Yes, there you go. I'm putting him on the spot. We don't need to get into a lot of detail on this. Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, like, it's so tough. I think, and I'm going to make a not fair statement here. When I think about film and TV critics, I just think about volume. If you look at maybe top 10, top 20 studios putting out content. Like, they're largely conglomerates now, right? So you just start, okay, cool. Well, this is out, and they also have fixed cycles. So, you know, you've got the upfronts, you know, you've got pilot season, all that stuff. So it's more cyclical than we are. Like, if, serialized TV is going to come out in the autumn, right? Because we're all inside because it's cold, watching TV instead of having fun and touching grass and all that shit. So I think that it's easier for them to manage the volume. Whereas for us, we release when we want, right? Like, all the time there's content coming out. And going back to your earlier questions about accessibility, right? Like, to a point, there's only a small subset of people that are making film and TV that any of us are going to see, right? Whereas in video games, let's restrict it to PC, Steam, right? Like, any of us can put shit on there and it can be found, but it requires us to be marketed, right? So, yeah, there's, for a games publication to do that, I think it's very difficult. I'll touch on commercials a little bit. Like, obviously, there's loads of magazines and games websites shutting down because they're not making enough money. And I'm saying the royal we, like, it's all our fault, right? Because we don't like fucking pay for anything because we're all spoiled and we want shit for free. And we don't like clicking on ads. So, like, it's a double whammy, right? Like, no one can make any money doing that. The world I want to see is when we're in the entertainment magazines, like when we're in GQ, right? Like, we're in not Vanity Fair, what's the Film or Total Film, right? You know what I mean? Like, obviously change the name from Total Film, but like when we're in those magazines, and I don't mean just like the 2 centimeter little blurbs you get on the back page, like just a feature, like Edge. Like, Edge is on borrowed time, right? Like, we're a couple of years away from them not being around anymore. Like, it's just, and also, even for us as gamers, and I'm betraying the industry here, like, I can't tell you the last time a review or a critique of a game informed my decision to either play it or buy it, right? Because I think that's where the distinction is. Like, film and TV, people trust those other people's opinions. So I don't. I trust your opinion. I'd be like, hey, you know me, like, we play similar sort of games or this subset of games. What do you reckon about this one? Oh, yeah, do that. Or, Lucy, gee, hey, listen, I played this game the other day. You're going to fucking love it. You give it a go, right? I think that's a really wide gamut. And I think with film and TV, there's a slight overlap, but that's fully in indie. Like, you're the people that go to film festivals and all that stuff when you're doing all the shorts. Like, that, I think that's the closest similarities between the two. But oh man, like, it's so tough. And then just one positive thing about that jumping to mainstream, NME, like a music magazine, is doing loads of games pieces, but the best thing they're doing about it, they're not speaking to me, they're speaking to music people. Like, the interviews and the content is framed so that they would enjoy it. So I think once they start doing that, and I'm not going to call anyone out, but like the entertainment magazines, like once they start to respect video games and understand them and be like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm not going to say this is great because it's got cool mechanics. I'm like, the story of this game and how it's delivered, and, you know, the narrative design, like that, and that's what's going to get the people that read those entertainment. Oh yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah, sorry,
Des, can I ask you a question? Because it's really interesting, because I find myself in the opposite situation where I don't read critics' opinions for film and television ever. I never have, because again, I know what I like, and also I know when I'm willing to sort of experiment and see what is on show. However, with games, I don't read reviews. I don't go to magazines for reviews, but people on YouTube, for example, streamers, people who like play the game because they get sent copies in advance and then they give you their opinion about the games, that I consume a massive amount. And I have, in fact, made purchasing choices based on those opinions and streamers, or maybe I watch someone stream like the first couple of hours of a game and then I decide, oh, I want to play this, or I just want to watch it. So I'm wondering if our criticism of video games is also going to be slightly different to the other mediums, in that it exists in this other space as opposed to being like published media or whatever, or having like professional trained, because critics are supposed to be, they're supposed to be experiencing media in a different way than the average consumer. That's the whole point of them being a critic. But with games, that might not be as interesting, because you want someone who's playing the game to tell you how it plays. If they see it as an academic, it's useless to you, because you're like, well, that's great. I love that, you know, they've done this and that, but how's the game? How does it play? So yeah, what was your opinion about that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you caught my clumsiness. So I treat video critiquing as journalism as well. Like I think that, yeah. Sorry, ignoring the format. Yeah, that's absolutely. If the question if they inform my decision, like they still don't. Like I find them performative, right? Because obviously they need clicks and traffic and stuff, right? So it's not like, Alex, will I like this or not? Yes or no? It's like, I won't get that from someone I don't know. But yeah, so yeah, cool.
Hey, I wanted to add something if we have time.
Yeah, please.
Cool. I think something that Des and Marta touched on is actually what I love about games, like journalism and review, that kind of like part of gaming, that like, because it's such a huge market with so many different genres and art styles and all that, like it's about finding your little like niche for your journalism. Like I follow like cozy games because that's what I like to play. I watch like horror game streams and reviews because that's what I like to watch, you know? So I think it's just about finding those spaces, because in games, people have opinions. They kind of know what they like. They know what they enjoy. With movies, I think it's a little bit, because it's not an interactive medium, you're not lost much just sitting in front of the screen for 2 hours. Like, and you can't, well, if you're at the cinema, you can't really quit. But like, I think it just takes up a lot more like mental dedication to get involved with the game. And so I think it's just about finding those kind of like spaces, because you already know what you like and what you don't. Like Des and Martin saying, a review will not change that. So you need to go to the people that you know like what you like. But we're creating this like huge thing of like specialist journalists, which I don't know how sustainable it is for them, because the audiences are much smaller. But for me as a player, it kind of works.
Cool. Sophia.
Sorry, I know we're moving on, but just to add that I feel a lot of, I agree with everything that everyone said. Just wanted to add that I do feel a lot of sympathy for video game journalists, because they have a tough job. It's different if you're writing about even a 3-hour movie versus a 200-hour video game that you often don't have that much time before everybody else gets the game. And sometimes you only have days, and you have to literally play as much as you can and then write about it and edit your work. And it's just, and then people can be ruthless if they happen to disagree with you about something you said about their favorite game or the new favorite game. So and there's not a lot of money on it, and so I'm kind of like, I feel very protective of people who try to do that as a living, because it's hard and it's often thankless. And so I don't begrudge people then focusing on what's gonna bring them the most money or the most resources, just so that they can continue doing their job, because often it's just a matter of survival. But yeah, that being said, I mean, I literally have this next to me. So, and I was just, there have been games that I have bought because I read about them, or that I saw someone that I don't know say something really interesting about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to see this for myself. So yeah, I just wanted to like give out a word of appreciation as well, because it is a tough job.
It is. That's last little thing before I get the last question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Martin. Sorry, just to answer part 2 of your question. So I think I'm weird. Like I do watch shows about me entertainment, but afterwards. So like Yahtzee, 0 punctuation. Like I'll only watch his videos after I've played the game, like just to get his. Yeah, it's weird to get his opinion on it and see if we laugh about the same thing. And then about movies, like I'm just hypercritical about movies, so I always watch like How It Should Have Ended, right? Like, you know, it's just like, oh, this should be different, and like that's performative, like they're trying to be funny. And the other one is Cinema Sins, right? Like,
I love them.
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
it's and like, I mean, sometimes they go off the track, but other times you're just like, yeah, I thought that too. That was a bit weird. So yeah, I don't know, like kind of like a reverse validation. I've already invested the time. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
A sense of community in what you experienced.
yeah.
Yes.
And also, if you're into Sins have a podcast where it's less about like sinning, and they actually talk about film, like because they're actually pretty knowledgeable about film and they talk about film. They're amazing. I love them. They're a great gang. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, to be honest, I'll be talking with you or hearing you talk to each other for ages. However, we need to kind of try to wrap this up. So, you know, the question is coming. You know, a question I'm going to ask. So you should start thinking about it. So, okay, we're going to be closing the raffle. So please while the answer this, put your last exclamation mark lottery or exclamation mark sorteo for after you on PS5. On the meantime, let me do the question. So, again, wrapping up, I want you to actually give me one game that would you preserve as art from all the industries, for all the years on the industry. So it could be Pac-Man or it could be something else, whatever you want. And then one for the last 10 years that you think people should play. And because I don't want to put you in the spot, I'm going to have my two. Actually, I changed one of them, by the way. So for me, one which is all-time favorite, and I think it's a massive in terms of art form, is Journey. I think control-wise, story-wise, even if there's no voice, it's just beautiful. From music, controls, art style, everything is just, we'll conserve that. Now, the one that I would recommend for the last 10 years, I think it's 10 years, released, is Soma, which is a horror game that actually, when I finished that game, stuck in my mind for weeks and weeks because of the question it throws back to the player, which made me question a lot of stuff. Which I think it's great that games get to do that to you and kind of stay with you for a long, long time. So, who wants to be first? I don't have. Why don't I do the first? So, Sofia, go, and then Marta will go next.
Okay, so it's funny. I was thinking about this question, and it's funny that we were talking about museums before. As an interesting thing, the Museum of Modern Art in New York actually collects video games, and they have video games in their collection that they are preserving. So it's their design. It's in their design collection, and the one that I was thinking for preservation, I just checked. They actually do have it in their collection, and that's Portal. Because I think it was such a defining moment in the history of video games to have this first-person sort of shooter that was not actually a shooter, and it was incredibly clever, amazing mechanic, just a memorable story, memorable antagonists. For me, still one of the pillars of inspiration that I still have in games. And for the game, like in the last 10 years, I'm gonna say Inside. If you haven't played Inside, you should definitely play. It's incredible. The less that I say about it going in, the better. It's also not a very long game, so you can play it in one seating. So yeah, those are my recommendations.
Cool. Marta.
So this is terrible, because it's also like, is it about me and the games I would like, or is it about games in general? And like,
no, it's just for you. It's for you, from your personal opinion.
I know, because Soma's a very good choice. That game did things to my brain. So yeah, I'm gonna say for me, for the of all time, for me, it was, I can't remember which one it is, but one of the Mario games on the Game Boy, because it's probably the game I've played the most. It's what got me into gaming. And I think we just had a Mario movie come out. It is one of the most endearing. It's just a little Italian-American plumber, you know, bouncing on mushrooms. And somehow it endures. And I think design-wise, music-wise, entertainment-wise, Nintendo, a huge conglomerate, has been built upon this teeny tiny, you know, game that you played in a little clunky machine on black and white. So for me, that would be the sort of all time one. Of the last 10 years, I mean, Soma was a very good choice. I'm going to have to go with The Last of Us, which is just 10 years this year, thank God, for a similar reason. I think because the final twist does present, it was a very, at the time, it was a really interesting sort of taking the camera and looking back and sort of changing your perspective on what a game actually is and what your place in a game is. And what, you know, as a player, as a gamer, and how you interact with the story, what agency is, what characters are. I found like that's one of those endings that also had me thinking about it for a very long time and had me reassessing my relationship with games and how I play them and why I play them. Being an actor also has things that go into that. But yeah, I think for me, The Last of Us, as great a game as it is on its own, that final part really stood out to me as being like, let's actually now put everything you know into question. And I was like, oh, okay, fair play, good. It's interesting.
Amazing. So, yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Lucy?
Cool, yeah. So for the anytime kind of game, I picked Tetris. I kind of like grew up with it. And it feels timeless. It's not about like a certain era or target audience. It just feels, you know, Tetris is Tetris. And I feel it represents this kind of like timelessness of games really well. And like it's for everyone. And my 10 years, it's Transistor by Supergiant. Because that game, it was a time where I was like swamped with working in games. And it was like the only game I finished. It was beautiful, like visually, the sound, the gameplay, everything. And on top of that, having that kind of very like human story about loss. Like I cried, and like for something to like evoke that emotion. Yeah, for me, it's just like it was a personal thing, but I really wish people like experience that in the art that it is. So,
amazing. Thank you. Des?
So, first of all, this question, I 1000% disagree with it. I hate it so much.
Thank you.
It's what we've been talking about for the last hour. It's all about subjectivity, right? And I basically, and I think we need to speak less as people because I've just been crossing off games that I had down for this. So, I had Limbo, but Sophia had Inside, so I'm not going to do that now. This is great. Marta, you brought up Mario, and I was going to mention, and not enough people played this, but it's Mario and Luigi in Superstar Saga, like the up. Fuck that game, just good stuff. And then literally Tetris, Lucy, like that game just transcends time. Like you play it in 1980, you play it in 3080. That game is going to be legit gold. Yeah. So thanks for that. So
but it's fine. It's fine. I said, you know, we can repeat stuff. It's just fine.
I had the backup I was going to go to was a game called Quantum Break by Remedy, and the reason for that is just because of all the different tendrils of entertainment and game making it touches. So it had a little bit of star power. So they had like 4 or 5 of people like that known, and they all did great. Like they're all legit. And what I liked by extension, like they're mainstream actors, but they were also in niche cultural shows. You know, like Games of Thrones, like that was a super niche thing. Fringe is a super like you don't really got all these super niche things. So we're all in this really cool subculture, which I really just like loved. It's also from a story and narrative design perspective, one of the most perfect time travel stories you're going to get. From a technical perspective, they hit it out of the park, like visually and what they were doing. The gameplay is kind of like maybe a 6 out of 10. So yeah, I would definitely lob that in the all-time list. And then as for the last 10 years, and I'm really close to the wire on this, but for me, it's Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. So, you know, this one thing that Nintendo does, right? They take all these IPs are 30 bloody years old, but they make us play them every other year like it's new, right? And so the original Link to the Past, yeah, it was dope on Super NES, but what they did is they took that and they just remixed it. Like, the imagination and creativity it took to do that is just, for me, one of those things when I think what is art and what are the components of something that is artistic. Their intent, that was amazing. And then obviously layering on the gameplay on top of that as well, and it just all fitting. I did just want to mention one thing, Sophia, because you mentioned about the archive. Like, for me, the saddest thing and the biggest challenge for us in video games is that archiving, right? Because in TV and film, if you can watch a video, like, you can almost put that on anything, right? Like, now that we're digital, like, obviously we've lost a whole bunch of tapes and stuff. But for us, like, these games, like, unless Nintendo are like, hey, we're going to make this available for you on the eShop, which they've just closed for the DS games, you're done. Like, you're never going to be able to play them. And, like, Link Between Worlds is an excellent 3DS game. And, you know, unless you got a device and a cartridge, you're not going to be able to play that, which makes me sad.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there.
It's a good case for keeping your devices and also buying physical media. If you love a game and you can get it in physical, get it in physical after you play it. And also I have my PlayStation 1 and all my Game Boys. I have all my devices there. They're stored, but they're there. So if I ever need them, I know I have them. Because yeah, digital is great, but if they decide to look at Netflix and stuff, if they decide to stop offering that, your game is gone. So keep that in mind.
Cool. So we reached kind of the end on here. So we're closing the raffle. Just give us a. Let me kind of first of all, thank all the panelists here. It's been amazing being with you. Sophia, love you forever. Please keep being so awesome. Lucy, I'm going to play the hell out of Isle of Illusion this weekend. Thank you for being so great. Marta, it's always a pleasure talking to you. So see you very soon, maybe next week. Cool. This, you enjoy your holidays. Thank you for making the time to be here with us as well today. And let's see who wants the raffle. Okay, so let me see how that works because it's the first time hosting. So give me a second. Cool. So for the first raffle, which will win a Resident Evil Village Gold Edition. Let's see. We got a winner. It'll be New Heart 6. Congratulations for winning Resident Evil Village Gold Edition for PS5. Congratulations. Now for the Creepy Syndrome. Let's see who the winner is. Oh, there you go. All other, it's Ryan. I think it's the name, official name for them. Congratulations for that, Creepy Syndrome. And now for the After You. Alex Tened, congratulations. You got a lovely copy of After You on PS5. Well, without further ado, thank you everyone for coming today. And see you very soon, hopefully with more of this.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a lovely day.